turn. It's going to be right behind you. They've just gone away. They've disappeared. They've disappeared. I'm just going to be behind you. Thank you.
So, John.
Thanks.
They said, you know, just have fun. Well, we're trying to, but they wouldn't let us out. They want us to talk. Yes. And I think that's okay. We should talk. We should talk. They wanted us to say when we met. But you thought we should do that later. Shall we tease them with that? What's the audience think? Later? We can bond up, come on.
Now!
Later. I think the first thing is you are interviewing me, right? No, I thought you were interviewing me. Do you have a book out? No, I don't have a book out. No, I've got a book out, so that's what I want you to do. Have you read it? Well, yes, I have. Yes, I didn't want to spoil it by reading it, but I did read it. And I actually very much enjoyed it. I genuinely mean that. Because it's very well written. Well, that shouldn't be a surprise to me, because we've done a little writing together. But I know how funny you are and how you can write sketches and films and things, but it's hard to write about yourself. And in fact, it's, in my case, it's undesirable. It's actually very difficult. It's an exercise that people say, oh, one day I'll write my story. So it's very interesting when somebody you know very well for 50 years, yes, writes about that period of time, at least a certain period of time, in which I knew John for the first time. And to me, the interesting thing about the book is several things. First of all, it stops with Python. So I was slightly disappointed, so I wanted to know what happened to you afterwards. You know, because I want to read about
people have said this to me. People have
said I want to read about Faulty, I want to read about Wanda, and I want to read about your journey into your discovering self-exploration, psychology and things like that. And that's, so is there to be volume 2?
Oh, yes. That's all the things you've just said.
Excellent. Have you done it?
No, but I'm looking forward to doing it. See, this was an experiment. I've never really written for the printed page. Well, I've always written dialogue. Have you?
I would have thought you'd be familiar with my work by now, John. Really, Mr. Hello Sailor. Road to Mars. Rutland Dirty Weekend Book. Greedy Bastard Diary. My God, let's tell you something. Yes.
I enjoyed it because you see, when you say writing about yourself, I think it's much easier to write about your childhood because that's not really yourself anymore. In other words, you can stand back and look at yourself as a child, and it's no longer really the person who's looking. And I think that's easier, and that's why I think often the first bit of an autobiography is often the most interesting because people can be more objective about themselves when they were kids, and then when they start writing about what they're doing now, their ego comes in. There's more sort of self-justification.
And I thought the most, because you actually quite a lot of the book is about you being young.
Yes.
And I found that the most fascinating fascinating to me was you said you were happiest. You were full of halcyon days when you went back to teach at your old prep school.
I know.
For 2 years you were a teacher.
I was a
And you
teacher.
said that was the happiest time.
Well, it was so wonderfully unstressful. You know, it really was. I think what happened when I went into show business, which as you know was pretty much by accident, I was in a show at Cambridge. You see, Eric and I are both in the footlights, but Eric is much younger than I am. What age are you?
I'm 71.
75. So my first year at Cambridge, I overlapped with David Frost, and my last year at Cambridge, I overlapped with you.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And then you went on to be president of the Footlights, right? Did you then know that you were going into show business?
No, but I knew I didn't want to go and get a proper job. So we were very lucky, because what happens after you were with David Frost at Cambridge, Frost became very big and that was the week that was, a TV show. And then he came and recruited us straight out of Cambridge, because he was always looking for writers. So we almost went straight into show business, I mean, into television and radio. It was very fortunate.
So I've been in America. Then when I came back, Eric and I were working together. We were on a writer's table for David Frost when he was doing the Frost Report. Do you guys know Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett? They were performers, but Michael Palin, Terry Jones, you and I, and of course dear Graham, we were all writing sketches together at 66. And we didn't get together for Python for another 3 years, three and a bit years.
That's right. And we have to thank you for that, I read from this book, which is you can be everywhere, but you can't be omniscient. So this is when you read somebody's book, they tell you what actually happened. Because you don't get that from Michael Palin's diaries. What happened?
They're much more exciting than There's Trouble.
Children's show called Do Not Adjust Your Set. And then John was watching it with Graham and he said, let's get Ben. And they came and got us, and that's how Python started.
That's right. We were writing a lot of stuff for Peter Sellers. We wrote 3 screenplays for Peter Sellers. And we used to stop on Thursday afternoon. Each show was Thursday afternoon. At about 4:30 to watch this kids program, which just happened to be the funniest thing on news television at that time. It was much funnier than anything on the evenings. And we just loved it. And it was, Andy Gilliam was already doing very primitive animations, right?
Yes, we brought him in the second series, yes.
So because we knew each other a little bit, it was very easy. I said to Graham, why don't we do a show with these guys? And we rang you up, and you were a bit snotty. You had an offer from a guy called Philip Jones at 10, somewhere right?
We had an offer from ITV. He wants us to go on the BBC.
You thought about it for a couple of weeks, and then you came back and said, oh, all right.
I think that they offered us our own show because we've been very successful on ITV for them. But they want us to do a late night, 45-minute show, 9:30 at night. But they didn't have any studios for 2 years. So they didn't have any studios.
A television company with no studio.
It's England. So we thought, well, we'll do that, and then we'll go back and do the other one. Because we didn't know it was going to be Monty Python.
No.
You know,
People never know that things are going to be successful. They really don't. I mean, when we started, we knew we were going to do something a bit risky. Yes?
we knew what we weren't going to do.
Yes.
I think we
There were a
weren't
whole
going
lot of conventions of
Yeah.
comedy, like punchlines and musical stings at the end of sketches, da 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 dee, and cutting to presenters and all that kind of thing. We knew we didn't want to do that. But I mean, you tell your version of what happened when we got together and a guy called Barry Took, who was a sort of friend of ours, who used to work at Monty, arranged for us to go and meet the head of BBC Light Entertainment.
Well, you tell him. It's in the book.
It's in the book. I wanted to hear your version, because what you discover is everybody's got a different version. And you
I like yours.
We said to Barry Took we would like to do something together, and he arranged it. And we went along to the BBC, and we always used to go in wearing jeans and sort of black leather jackets and that kind of thing, instead of wearing suits. And he was a nice guy, and he knew us a little bit, but not terribly well, right?
Right.
And he said to us, well, I gather you guys want to do a series. And we said, yes, I believe that's what we want to do. And he said, well, tell me what you're proposing to do. And we hadn't really discussed it.
Yes. We don't really know.
We said, we want to do a humor show, obviously, jokes and gags.
Will we have other people in it? We said, well, we don't really know.
So what about music? We said, music, we might have some. So what about film? Oh, yes, we said, we definitely have some film. And then there was this embarrassed silence, and I am particularly prone to embarrassment. I thought this is the worst meeting. This is a sort of non-pitch meeting. Michael looked at us and said, oh, go away and do 13 shows.
So he said, well, I'm only going to give you 13.
That's right.
Exactly, yeah.
That's right.
And they never wanted to read scripts. We never had to go through meetings. We had no executives. That's all you need to succeed in comedy.
It says something about creativity, because we did actually come up with something that most people say was genuinely original. And at that moment, we had no idea what we were going to do.
No, I think even halfway through. We would read out and write stuff over 5 or 6 days, and we'd get together at Jones's house, because he had the biggest house. And then we'd read out the stuff, and if it was funny, we'd say, well, that's in the show. And if it wasn't funny, we'd say, well, we'll sell that to Barker and Corbett. Because we were still working writers, so there was nothing wasted.
What I said was, I mean, I'm going to give us, pay all of us one compliment, is we were very good on script. So if you'd written something that didn't really quite work, someone would say, wait a minute, that bit there, about a third of the way in, that's very funny for a bit. And then someone would say, well, why don't you develop that? Maybe you could do that. You see what I mean? And then you could take away a piece of material and use just a quarter of it or a third of it and build that up. Or even just take that a little bit and stick it between 2 other sketches. So there was an enormous expertise. I mean, there was no better group I've ever come across to give material to get feedback from.
It was very honest too. There was no like, oh, still that sucks after page 3. It was like, that's really bad. And people didn't get offended. It was like a writer's group. There's a great honesty in writing comedy. You really do want to know when it stops being funny.
Yes.
Because you don't want to be out there with it.
Yes.
It's not working. So it was very useful like that. And when we actually ran out of ideas, we couldn't make it any funnier. We just say, oh, well, cut to Terry Gilliam animation. Take it from there, and he would lead us into another sketch. after Bill, and he would just. What was interesting about it when I look at the shows now is because of the animation, it looks like it's frameworked by the animation. So it looks like it's meaning something. All these disparate things seem to be going somewhere, which is a complete illusion. It's just a series of gags and sketches. But it has the impression of being something because it's book-ended and it's got a framework of Gilliam.
Yeah, that's right. And yet Gilliam's stuff that came in at the last moment because we wrote the script first, and then in the script, as Elle says, it would say, we start at the end of the pet shop, and then we want to get to an undertaker, and then he would say a shorter piece or a longer piece, and then Terry would go away and animate that, and we never saw it until the afternoon of the recording. He would bring it in and show it to us. That was the first time we ever saw it.
It really was. And it was crap.
They haven't gone. They're still standing there. You still want to go?
It's the photographer.
We don't mind. Oh, it's a photographer. Oh, I just thought
They're allowed to walk about.
Let him down.
Yeah. He's got an access all area.
So, when did we meet at Cambridge?
We met at Cambridge in February 1963.
That's a good answer. February 1963. How can you so precise?
So sure. Because it was at the Pembroke Smoker.
Yes.
Which a smoker in Cambridge is a smoking concert where in those days you were encouraged to smoke. It's good for you. And then they had wine and smoking, and it was like a comedy show for 3 or 4 nights done by Pembroke College. And John would dine at Pembroke College. Everybody thought he was at Pembroke College, but he wasn't. He was at Downing.
But I didn't like Downing. All my friends were at Pembroke, and they kept saying, come and have dinner at Pembroke. So in the end, I started drifting in there, even when they hadn't asked me. The staff assumed I was at Pembroke for 3 years. When I actually went back to Downing just before my final exams, and I walked in because I thought I've got to be on the law at 9 o'clock when I get that exam paper. So I went in for a breakfast early, which I didn't normally do. I was challenged by the guy from Downing College who said, "You are not a member of this college." I said, "I'm afraid I am. I just never come here." I used to go to Pembroke, and I had so many friends in Pembroke. And then I don't think any other college had a smoker.
Oh, is that right? Well, Pembroke had a comedy tradition because Peter Cook had been there. And I auditioned for Tibbet Taylor and Bill Oddie. And so my first year I was in this strange smoking concert, which was a really funny show. They were very funny comedians, and I was just a new boy and I was allowed in. Graham Garden was not there, he was in Ennio. But one of the pieces I did was actually written by John. And it was a newsreader called BBC BC. But he did it in the news. It was a biblical news, and John had written a weather forecast. So they were putting in over the whole of the Holy Land, there would be like frogs, lice, like death of all the firstborn. Sorry about that, Egypt. It was like gems like that. So I was doing this material, and then after the concert, Humphrey Barclay brought up John, and we met, and he'd written it. It was just amazing.
And that particular piece of material made, I'm sorry, I've got a slight cold, made me laugh more than I've ever laughed on stage before. It's because it was in a show and we were touring New Zealand. Because after we'd started the show, his first year, my third, people came along and offered us jobs at the BBC, and then an impresario said he wanted to put us on in the West End. Then he took us to New Zealand, and we actually toured New Zealand. We left England in July 1964, and we arrived in Auckland in the
July 1864.
It was a very bizarre thing, I mean, because they were so far behind. Bill Oddie went into an ice cream parlour and asked for a banana split, and the Kiwi said, banana split? He said, yes, a banana split. So the Kiwi went and got a banana, peeled it, split it. The chaplain ordered a 3-egg omelette. The waitress was astonished. She said, a 3-egg omelette? I said, you know, an omelette with 3 eggs. And after about a quarter of an hour, this huge omelette arrived with 3 fried eggs. We got to Dunedin for the matinee. The audiences have been very good. We were just getting ready for this 2 o'clock matinee on a Saturday, and there was a very strange clinking noise. And we couldn't quite make out what it was, but then we thought it was coming from the audience. We went and peeped through the drapes, and the audience consisted entirely of 70-year-old ladies, each with a cup of tea. They all got Parkinson's, so they were making... We went out and we did the show to complete silence. And it was terribly funny after a time. If you try and be funny and the audience goes, ah, you want to kill yourself. If they're completely silent. And I said to the cast, because I was doing the weather forecast for the plagues of Egypt, I said, I am going to get the first laugh. And they said to me, you won't get a laugh. You will not get these people laugh. And there was quite a lot of money. I had £10 with the Bill Oddie and another 10 with I was going to get the first laugh, so I went out there. And I remember saying, you know, was it rivers of blood and locusts and so forth, and I paused and I said very loudly, and moving in from the southeast, boils. Total silence. Except screams of laughter from the wings. The stage in the spotlight, I just fell about the laugh. For about 30 seconds, and the little old ladies didn't mind at all.
You also reveal in your book that that's why you got laid.